The average age of the population in the service area that we're discussing is very close to twice the state average for persons 65 years and older. The largest source of income in this service area is retirement and public assistance, well known as mailbox economy. We had our pioneers and our forefathers to see the development of railroads for the purpose of coal and to transport such. We have people that have been students recently or will be students of Mountain Empire College that will see the demise of railroads. Due to tax laws, railroads are taxed at a very high transportation rate if the railroad rails and ties remain in place. It is very advantageous financially for railroads when a line or branch becomes dormant, that they remove the steel and the cross ties and it becomes open space at at the lowest tax rate. I predict with some certainty we're going to see that. I think the first will be the Southern Rail from Appalachia to St. Charles. There has not been any coal mined in St. Charles in the past 10 years. And there is no promise that there will be any metallurgical coal that is available in the Black Mountain area. That's where the coal that serves St. Charles. There's two railroads that serve St. Charles. The only coal that is being shipped or processed is Kentucky coal, which comes through the mountain on a conveyor. They have two such conveyors that do that. L&N, now the CSX Railroad, has a branch that extends from Pennington Gap to St. Charles. They, I would predict, would remain a few more years. That road was abandoned several years ago, but with the resurgence of coal in the 70s and 80s, they reinstated and rehabilitated it at where they could run unit trains. What advances have we seen in this service area in the past 50 years? Could be mindset from a why not today versus why. We've always done it this way, and an adversity to change. That is one of the hardest things that one can try to attack as far as a population is concerned. Regionalism versus get the company to do it. And there will be tumbleweed in the streets. We have seen it in the gold part of this country. We've seen it in the copper mine communities, and we've seen it in the lead mine communities located in various parts of this country. The improved downtowns, which is most all of our communities show a great deal of pride in their downtowns. And what we have done, and we're learning slowly but surely, grow new grow your own jobs, because recruited jobs and branch plant operations, we have learned, are not long-term. 20 years, everything from a tax law advantage, they close, they move on to another community, they get all of the concessions that they can muster, they stay 20 years or sell, change hands, then they move on. Jobs that are created locally and expanded locally are there for the duration. This is the future of this particular area of Southwest Virginia. We have, at our hard work through the years, we have got 2 4-lane arterial roads that intersect in the city of Norton, and they serve the extremities of the service area except Dickinson County. You have to have a good educational system and good transportation system if you're going to have progress. Outside investors as well as inside investors look at this with a very keen eye. High school, vocational schools in each of our counties, Mountain Empire, that we came on the scene in 1971, University of Virginia College at Wise, when it became 4-year institution in 1968. Most all, except in Lee County, the public school facilities are of modern day. Broadband and cellular communications, we were late getting those, but it gives us now a global connection, and we're enhancing the broadband as I speak. Regional health care. We learned the hard way that it's hard for a community to support small healthcare facilities. Therefore, we now have a regional service, that's Ballad Health. It's not the best in the world, but it's much better than what we had before, which was individual hospitals, very small, that could not stand alone. In 1971, less than 30% of the households in this service area had potable water. In 2021, that number is in the low 90 percentile. Economic development. Regionalism. No progress was made until the localities decided to work together. And this started in the late 1950s. It flourished in the 1960s and probably became of age when the Lee, Norton, Wise, Scott Regional Planning District Commission was chartered by state legislation in 1969. In 1988, a major breakthrough, which politically was not the most popular thing to do, is when the General Assembly, based on a study that was done locally, decided to take a portion of the coal severance tax and place it into the field exclusively for economic development. This has made a distinct difference in the progress that has been made. Another factor that is important to us, that is the Our population, although it has diminished since '71, but we've got better educated and better dedicated elected officials. And as a consequence, they tend to be less partisan. Region became a regional pioneer, and when they did that, they attracted some really good friends, such as the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Economic Development Administration, the Governor's Office in Virginia, various state agencies, and the private sector. The private sector like to be associated with winners, and they felt very much so that the way to go for the future was with more than two localities working together, which would be called regionalism. Linwood Holton, a native of Big Stone Gap, became governor in 1970. Our region became a light on the state map for the first time in history. The common joke was the state ends at Abington. Well, there's a lot of people thought the state ended in Roanoke, but Governor Holton, being the governor for 4 years, did not pointedly show us favoritism, but his mere presence in Richmond brought more attention to us, and we're enjoying that today. Some challenges that we have endured. One, as it's been said, was apathy and indifference by our population. One morning, I was eating breakfast, and I had my television turned to CBS Early Morning, and I saw one of their outstanding reporters, later was Daniel Shore with CBS, and it showed him on the street in Pikeville, Kentucky, and he was interviewing people on the street. And he puts the microphone in the face of this one gentleman, elderly, retired, former coal miner. And he said, "Sir, is it true that here in the Appalachian Mountains that the biggest problem is apathy and indifference?" This gentleman looked skyward. "Well, I'll tell you, I don't know, and frankly, I don't give a damn." So anyway, that pretty much sums up what apathy and indifference. Being adverse to change, especially regionalism. The pioneers in regionalism in the late 50s and 60s, it was not without opposition. Some anti-groups thought that when the counties went together for a common good on projects, that was a communistic threat to their way of life and the loss of their ability to control their local governments. Big Stone Gap, I lived there for 37 years. 35 years I served at a regional agency capacity. They told me early when I moved to Big Stone Gap there, with the Lenowisco office being located there, you go ahead and do your thing, but we don't need your help. Anything that the town can't provide, the company will provide it for us. And the company being Westmoreland and Penn, Virginia. That changed in 1995 when the company closed its operations in Virginia. 10 years later, Big Stone Gap lost its water system, which they were so very, very protective of. Extremely jealous. They would not sell water to their neighbors. Big Stone Gap was undertaking a completely new reservoir dam replacement. At the same time, we had a drought of record. And on one particular day, water could not get to town from the reservoir. It was dry. Without even making a request, their neighbors saved the town of Big Stone Gap. Appalachia, they laid a temporary line above ground to Big Stone and tied in. Lee County pumped water reversible in their system from Pennington Gap, pumped water to the town. Duffield reversed their pumps and pumped water to a tank near Mountain Empire Community College that would serve that particular area. Norton, which had begged Big Stone Gap for water for many years to help supplement their reservoirs. And they, without asking, Norton said, our water runs downhill. And they tied in and started serving water. That turned the anti-tide. And keep in mind, there's a lot of funerals that had taken place during this particular period. The younger set coming on, council people and business people, they said, we do have good neighbors and we're going to try to be a good neighbor. Scott County is not regional and never will be, because they are and have been since their existence a suburb of Kingsport and a bedroom for Kingsport. Everything south of Clinch River in Scott County, except for the legality of one state with another state, they are an integral part of Kingsport, Tennessee. North of the river, small farms and people who earned a living from the coal industry. Scott County will never change. The #1 regional industrial park in the state and the eastern United States is located at Duffield. It was not originally, nor has it now universally been accepted by Scott County leadership and the business community. Everything is centered in the Gate Weber City area, and Duffield is north of the river, and it is not controlled by the county. They will be regional in the future when it is at their convenience to do so. A big thing that is faced is industries and people that were wanting to build branch plants throughout the area. When you mention coal, you mention pro-union. Duffield Industrial Park was dormant for 17 years while it housed 3 local unions. Shortly after 1995, when the last union company closed, it has flourished, and the park of 310 net acres is now full capacity. People can work with unions, but they would like an opportunity to work with their own personnel without the union being involved. And we had one organization that took place 6 months after the plant opened, and one at 7 months. So that is not a good omen when you're talking to industrial prospects. Continual loss of population is going to be something that we're going to have to live with. With the loss of the coal jobs, most all of the population under the childbearing years of early 40s had to leave the area to find work, gainful employment elsewhere. That has stabilized, and I don't believe that 10 years hence we're going to show the large percentage of population loss that we have suffered in the past 2 censuses. Lack of good roads, educational and healthcare facilities. As I've mentioned earlier in this presentation, there's been tremendous progress that is made. Wise County, the largest county, does not have a single mile of unpaved secondary road. They use the coal severance tax to make this happen. Lack of political influence goes hand in hand with loss of population. And that is going to be a continual problem as far as representation in Richmond at the General Assembly. State public school reimbursement, known as the composite index for the coalfield region, has been among the highest reimbursement formulas known in the state. This extra funding is at the expense of the wealthier school divisions in northern, central, and Tidewater, Virginia. This is being addressed at each session of the General Assembly. Sooner or later, these affluent localities are going to have the voting power to put a stop to this. And this is going to be the hardest financial decision that our localities are going to have to face. When coal severance was passed in 1966, coal-producing counties, including the service area we're discussing, did reduce taxes rather than improve services and facilities. This was not well received in Richmond. the idea that was put forth that the General Assembly passed the severance tax against strong opposition from the coal companies was that we're going to pull ourselves up our bootstraps. This will give us funds to do economic development, recreation, and improve our downtowns. We didn't do that. Being Appalachian, Hatfield, and McCoy politicians, we used that to lower taxes so re-election would be much easier. Coal has been great, but now it's gone and it's not going to return. There's going to be some mining in the next 10 to 15 years in this service area of metallurgical coal, which is a very high quality coking coal used to manufacture steel. This country produces no steel, so it's all exported, mainly to China. We must adapt to a region without railroads and coal. Coal company leadership and influence is gone. That's going to be missed. Political distance to Richmond has increased with the loss of population, and it's going to increase, albeit slower than in the past. Our future asset is our educated young people willing to stay and work in the region. For example, let me say recruiting outside medical specialists. I have firsthand witnessed recruitment social events where the doctor was very impressed. A week later, we found out that his wife said absolutely no, we're not moving to the mountains. So we are still going to have that. They can overcome that with the creating our own small businesses and jobs. The investment by our localities in the past 50 years in shovel-ready industrial and commercial sites has really been a great advantage for us to go forward. Having access to flexible economic development funding like the Virginia Coalfield Economic Development Authority and the new program known as Go Virginia. Our regionalism model has attracted national attention, as well as 8 foreign delegations, including 2 visits from China. My 60-year experience in this region, much progress with fewer resilient people will occur in the region as we go forth, being better educated and better equipped. It might be said, and has been said by others, Appalachia mountain people do the difficult things immediately, the impossible take a while longer. My name is Bruce Robinette. I was born on February the 21st, 1938, very near the community of Duffield. My parents were tenant farmers who spent 35 years with the same landlord at 2 different locations. At the age of 6, my family moved to the Back Valley section in western Wise County to a dairy farm where I remained until I finished college. In 1961, I just earned a bachelor's degree. I became a secondary school teacher at Coburn High School in Wise County. 4 years later, in 1965, working to get a master's degree at Virginia Tech, I moved to the city of Waynesboro, Virginia, where I spent 3 years in administration. In 1968, I returned to become the third executive director of the Leto-Wisco Planning District Commission, where I remained until I retired in 2003. This has been my pleasure to share these thoughts with anyone who views this.